Welcome back to my YouTube channel, guys. Today I'm finishing up the series that I started at the beginning of 2021 on the Champagne Saber. I made a Champagne Saber to pop the cork at the beginning of 2021. It was a fun project. I made two videos, part 1, part 2, already. If you want to go watch those, you haven't already seen them, go check those out. This is the final video, part 3. And so I am finally finishing up this series and getting it off my hard drive. So I hope you guys enjoy it. If you like it, make sure you subscribe, leave a comment, like. I'll see you next time. Alright everybody, welcome back to the Champagne Saber project. This is part 3. I'm going to be hopefully finishing up the knife today, and then I'll do a sheath later. Today I'm going to go ahead and start on the grinder. I'm going to start by grinding out these bevels. This has been tempered. I tempered it in the oven at 415 for two 2-hour cycles, and I think that's a good temperature for this steel of a blade this size, because 80 CRV2, that's what this is, 80 CRV2 is pretty naturally tough. You don't want to temper it back too much because then it's going to be soft and it's just not going to hold up. But at the same time, you want to temper it hotter than normal, because if you don't, there's a lot of stress going to be put on this blade. I think this steel can take being left a little bit harder and still be tough, because it's basically a really high grade spring steel. That's basically what this is. It's a Swedish spring steel, so should be good. I'm confident it'll be good, especially with that fuller in it. The fullers provide some extra rigidity. Basically, the more surface area you have, the more flexibility your blade has. The more rigidity it has, the less it wants to actually bend out of shape. Those curves on the inside of that fuller provide some stability to the structure of the blade. So I'll show you what that cross section of the blade with a fuller does, or at least try to explain it. Here we go. Alright, so here's your cross section. It kind of looks like this, something like that. So that is the cross section of the blade. These are the fullers, and this is the edge, and this is the top. So you have more surface area when you do this than if it was just straight up. If it was just one big wedge, you wouldn't have as much surface area as you do with this, because this creates more area, more surface on the blade. It also provides a cupping, like this kind of rigid structure for the blade that doesn't allow it to flex left and right very much. So it really just wants to stay straight. So that's why people put fullers in blades, especially long blades like swords and stuff like that. They put it in there to provide rigidity, provide structure to the blade, so it's not easily bent out of shape or anything like that. So that is why fullers exist. That's why people do it. And that is why I put it on this. Also because it's kind of historical. Sabers, sometimes they have 2 fullers. But, you know, that sounds awful, and I really don't want to do that. So, 1 fuller, I think it looks dope, and I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to go to the grinder first. I'm going to grind the bevels and finish out the fuller after that, and then I'm going to put a handle on it. So let's get going. Alright guys, one thing I wanted to mention is that when you heat treat a blade, it develops decarb, and that happened, something fell. There we go. So decarb happens when I don't know exactly the science behind it, maybe I should look it up. But before I look it up, best I understand it is that when you heat heat up the blade, some carbon goes into solution and it escapes from the surface of the blade. When you grind your blade, after you've heat treated, you have to grind through that surface that it's not very thick, and it all depends on, the thickness depends on, you know, your soak times, the heat that you brought it up to, all of that. All of that contributes to that. All of that's a factor in that. So that's the way I understand it. So the carbon is leaving the surface and leaving kind of a soft iron layer on the top, on the surface. I think that theory tracks because when I do sand my, for instance, that little black line above my layers, that is when the carbon has left the iron layer and gone up into the stainless, and then you see a white line below the black line, and that is from the iron layer, the decarb on the inside. That's my theory. So let's look up what decarb is. What is decarb on steel? So it stands for decarburization. According to Wikipedia, so if you guys trust Wikipedia, I think I do. Decarburization or decarbonization is the process opposite to carburization. Namely, the term is typically used when metal is heated to temperatures. The metal reacts with gas hydrogen, that would be the air, at surfaces which are in contact with decarburizing gas. So that's decarb. You always have that unless you do something like, you find some way to heat up your steel in some sort of solution. Like some people use liquid salt, then you don't get any decarb at all. And that's what a lot of people use. They use salt, liquid salt, it's molten. It's kind of dangerous, so I don't use it. It's really easy to just grind through decarb. That's why I'm not too worried about it. I just use a heat treat oven. So this is ready to be ground. I need to grind the edge just a little bit so I can get that decarb layer off the edge, and I can have a nice hard edge when it's all said and done. Alright guys, so I have ground this blade to 400 grit and it is ready to hand sand. I've decided I'm going to hand sand it up to 220 grit. 220? Yes, indeed, 220. 220 is a great grit if you know how to do it cleanly, and I'm going to do it as cleanly as I possibly can with that 220 grit. This is what it looks like. There's a little bit of inconsistency in the fuller on each side, unfortunately. I need to work on doing that better, but I think it's good enough to hand sand and get those inconsistencies out. it's not the easiest thing to do in the world. So that, I think, is ready to hand sand. So I'm gonna go ahead and head on over to the workbench over there and sand this blade. Alright everybody, here's the blade all finished up, ready for a handle now. So we can get it focused. It's gonna be super sweet. Ready for a handle. I think I'm gonna do African blackwood or whinge, weathered whinge. So we'll see. I'm gonna go look at some handle materials and decide then. After that, we can try it out. So I think I've decided that I really want to use African blackwood. It's probably one of my favorite woods, and I haven't used it in a long time. And it'll go really well with the simplicity of this blade. This blade is super simple, and I think it requires a super simple but beautiful handle material. So I'm going to go with African blackwood. It's super nice, super simple wood grain. See if it'll focus. There we go. Just a really simple wood grain. And it'll be all black with the silver blade and black fuller and black flats. It'll be like a tuxedo, like it's just gonna be sweet. So I'll go ahead and get this thing cut up into slabs and get my handle put on. Happy New Year, everybody. Subscribe.
Oh, sorry.
Alright, bringing in the new year with champagne. Take this cage off. Don't pop. I'm using the champagne Saber for 2021. Please don't explode. I don't know if this one's gonna do it.
Watch out.
Are you on the scene?
Yeah.
Kurt.
Right there. What?
Blow away from it.
I don't know about this one. There's another seam over here. Let's try this one. There it is.
That's so cool. Oh, Kurt. That's awesome.
There it
You
is.
took the whole half off.
There it is. 2021.
Dude.